Big band jazz is almost universally agreed upon to be a product of its time. It's a reflection of what the mentality was. World War II was in full swing, the economy was coming back, and everybody was gung-ho for doing their part. The times made the music, and the music made the times. Fast forward to the 70s, and this behavior isn't clearly visible. Diversity of music is exploding. Some people argue that in this decade, every genre had its golden age. Rock, pop, disco, and country were all riding high. And if you look at the top charts from each year in the 70s, you'll see a chaotic mix of entirely unrelated genres. Starting at 1970, you've got songs like Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, War, and Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Three songs that are almost entirely unrelated thematically, but they're all being successful at the same time. Moving on to 1973, you've got Let's Get It On, Crocodile Rock, and Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree, occupying some of the top spots. Again, a series of unrelated songs, all of which are popular at the same time. Moving on to 1976, Oh What a Night, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, and the rest of the disco pandemic that happened around this time. And wrapping up the decade in 1979 are My Sharona, Le Freak, I Will Survive, Hot Stuff, the YMCA, and way more iconic songs that I don't have the time to list right now. Like I said before, this musical glut doesn't easily lend itself to a clear times to music relationship like the big band sound of the 30s and 40s does. But for those of you that are familiar with the 70s, you'll see the connection that I'm about to make. The 70s was a time of crazy turbulence, with the Vietnam War being protested heavily, Apollo 13 was almost lost to space, the fallout from the Stonewall Massacre was happening, the vice president was accused of tax fraud, the fuel shortage caused by the OPEC embargo were happening, and the president had just been forced to resign due to espionage on the other political party. This is all before 1975 had even rolled around. It was a time of revolution, a time of fear, and a time of rapid change. Everyone's voices could be heard at once, and the music is a reflection of that. The 70s has no clear definition musically because it was constantly a morphing decade with endless changes happening every year. I'm not going to spend this whole video about the 2000s music talking about the previous millennium though. It's time to move on to our main course. The 2000s are almost definitely the flashier of the 2 decades we've experienced in the new millennium. And if you've kept up with pop much, you'll remember a whole slew of popular bands that embodied this flashier vibe. Looking at artists by the amount of time they were on the Billboard Top 100, you've got 41 weeks of Usher, 36 weeks of Beyonce, 26 of the Black Eyed Peas, and 23 weeks of Nelly, with such songs as I Got a Feelin', Yeah, Boom Boom Pow, Gold Digger, and Low dominating the charts throughout this period. Even when the songs got sadder and more emotional, there was still a beat underneath that was kind of upbeat and you could jam to it, with the decade's longest running hit, We Belong Together, by Mariah Carey, being a perfect example of this. It's hard to directly see what would be the impetus for this genre though. How can we draw meaningful conclusions from the Black Eyed Peas, or Destiny's Child? What societal conditions were they reflecting? It's just trashy pop music, right? Well, sort of, but you need to understand what this music means to people before we get into what it's reflecting. I just want to ask you a few questions about what 2000s pop means to you. You know, the Black Eyed Peas, Destiny's Child, Beyonce, the whole shebang.
Yeah, 2000s pop is my fallback genre. When I feel like I need a pick me up when I'm down in the slums, there's nothing like 2000s pop that just gets you up and running.
All right, awesome. I can feel that. But first I want to ask you, what do you think of when I mention this genre? Like, when I say 2000s pop, what comes to your mind immediately?
The imagery that came a lot with it, the types of music videos that would be up on MTV, a lot of pink, a lot of extremely flashy dressing, and a lot of skimpy outfits, and a lot of partying.
Yeah, I can get that. That's honestly exactly the point I'm trying to make. So, what does the music mean to you though? Like, okay, it's what it inspires in you, what you think about it, but is there something deeper? Maybe like what feeling does it inspire in you? I guess is what I want to say.
Right. Well, growing up as a European kid, non-English speaking, I grew up with the whole singing highly explicit lyrics with no English vocabulary, just sounds at the top of my lungs at 12 years old. So it always inspires memories of good and better times when I was a kid, out with my friends, or in a car ride, wherever, just having a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And one last question. Do you think that this kind of imagery that it evokes, this specific idea that it inspires in you, Do you think there's anything more to that than it just being trashy pop music? Do you think that there's maybe something deeper at play with this music?
I think that the average person know, but having an idea and trying to think about what went on during those times, I think any conversation that I've had with any person about it thinks though that times were better then, that everyone was just happy and everyone wanted to be in a good mood.
And that's exactly it. The music is fun, it's optimistic, and even when it's sad, it's still upbeat. In America, things were generally good. Outside of 9/11 and the 2008 financial crisis, the 2000s were overall a decent time. It wasn't until 2013 when the first music from those affected by this crisis actually were able to, make it to market. But that's a story for another time. For now, I want to focus on the 2000s themselves and how they inspired this music. The 90s before this had been filled with crime and counterculture. Things were rebellious and new, so new genres popped up and dominated the times. However, over the course of this decade, things visibly got better. The economy was going up, and America's standing in the world had become more or less unchallenged. It's important to get this context, because with the 2000s coming in, life was good, as I said, with computers entering every home and the economy booming for the average person. And I'm not just making this up. Statista has data for this period, and from 1999 to 2008, the median income of people was far higher than it had been the previous decade. Everybody was partying, everybody was having a good time, and the music reflected that growth and success. Interestingly enough, this upbeat music truly ended in 2013, after 5 years of economic decline, a length of time equal to the 5 years of growth that had caused the 2000s pop to come about. Add on top of this, though, the fact that Europe had also recently been freed from the Iron Curtain, leaving Western Europe without the pressure it had existed under since World War II. Both sides of the Atlantic were riding high. 2000s music is the distilled culture of such an era, with the blind optimism and enjoyment from that time coming through with every party song released. I mean, there's a reason that when you search 2000s in Spotify, you get this. But why talk about this? It's just a short video that ends on what might be obvious for some people. Why worry about something so specific? Well, for me, I think that it's easy to disregard whichever music is popular right now as just, oh, it's pop music, and to retreat into the limited amount of pop you like while listening to your other main genres. But that mindset never helped anybody. I want you to carry forwards the legacy of 2000s music and apply that thinking to every song you've ever enjoyed and every song that is ever playing on the radio. You can understand the music of the 2000s through this lens. You can understand the music of the 2010s through this lens. And you can understand the music that will be coming in the 2020s through this lens. The times make the music, and the music makes the times, and that will always remain true.